We are live. Yeah, come back in the screen. Don't run away.
Just about, just about.
All right, man. 7 things that will not save your marriage. Let's get the ball rolling. Cool. So, as you know, there's a lot of focus out there on what to do to save your marriage. What's also important is to look at what not to do. Okay? We don't talk about that stuff that much. And if your marriage is not working and you are, interested in saving it, then you must be clear if you are doing things that are making your current situation just worse. Okay. Because 99% of the time, a husband doesn't seriously want to work on his marriage until he actually gets the slap from the wife, right? What's the slap? The typical "I love you but not in love with you." I want a divorce, I want to separate, restraining order, I cheated on you. And anyways, at that point, many emotions erupt in the husband, right? And I'm sure it was the same for you, right? If you're watching this. Now, these emotions, which are often driven by bullets, aka your insecurities, they can make you do things that you don't want to do, things that do not serve you, your wife, or the marriage. In fact, I'd say they make things very much worse. Continuing these behaviors will do really one and only one thing, which is accelerate the path to divorce. Okay, so today we're going to discuss what we think are the 7 most destructive behaviors that have proven to accelerate divorce. And in order to stabilize your marriage from getting worse, you really got to stop all of these behaviors like right away. Okay. And we're not just going to talk about the behaviors, but kind of what to do as well. Okay. Because only then can you truly start building on top of it other behaviors that have proven to work. You can't continue what you're doing and then try to put in other stuff. It just doesn't work. Okay. And if you've been following us, you know that at TBH, we're a very strong believer that only action can change where you are at. Only action can take you from the trenches to, a happy place with you and your family. If you do not take action, nothing will change. But taking the actions that have proven to work, like it does matter. Okay. Now, this is why, because we'll believe in action, in addition to the 8 free resources that we usually give it on these lives, we've pivoted. Last week we had our first Q&A, and we're going to continue with that. We're going to do a Q&A, question and answers, at the end of the live. Okay, so we're going to be covering a little bit less topic, but we're going to make it more interactive with having a live section. So you'll be getting like a hard copy book, 330-page Bulletproof Husband book, for trainings, template, email mentorship program, 1 hour of coaching call, plus the Q&A time with us. Okay, so please make sure you are present, paying attention, and jot down questions that come up, whether it's regarding your current marriage situation or something about the topics that we're going to cover, so that you're equipped to give us what you need so that we can help you. Help us so we can help you. Okay. All right, let's get this started with the first symptom that you are making things worse with. Okay. And that is, my friend, desperation. So desperation is king. I don't know if you've heard that saying. My father used to say it all the time. And this may be true in some scenarios, like when you're in a financial crunch and you'll take any job to make ends meet and build a business because of that financial desperation. However, in marriage, it is not true. Okay, desperation kills marriage, to put it simply. The more desperate you are, the further away you push your wife, because the actions that come from a place of desperation are rushed, not clearly thought out, emotional, and often full of mistakes because they tend to not provide what the marriage needs. And desperation is really the very first thing that you as a husband, you need to get rid of. So when you're thinking of, working on the marriage and rebuilding yourself, it's a must. That's foundational, right? And I'm talking about things like desperation to win her back, desperation for quick fix, desperation for fixing it by yourself, or desperation for snooping, right?
Yeah, and it's funny because actually the only positive that has come out of a man's desperation is the fact that it led him here, right, to finding us. And um, as as he was like desperately trying to find a solution to his relationship pain, right? And now one of the first things you're hearing from us following that desperation is it's one of the key things that you need to stop doing in your efforts to repair your relationship,
Mhm.
right? So I applaud you for being here. I applaud you for that desperation as a motivator for you to be invested enough to care about your relationship and actually want to uh, go and fix it. And the fixing it is what we're going to dive into.
Yeah, yeah. And this is such a key part of it, because any area where you are kind of, feeling desperate to do something, like, just has to stop, because it'll only cause you to be in trouble. Like, seriously, right? And here's the thing: when you get rid of desperation, a few things tend to happen. You feel more free. You think more clearly. Codependence starts to go away from your end. Really, dependence, right? Because codependence means you're codependent. That means she's dependent on you, you're dependent on her, right? So when I say your part, it's really your level of dependence on her starts to go away. And your wife tends to be more curious about you, because your neediness is starting to diminish. Now, the antidote for getting rid of desperation is this concept we call grieving the marriage. So let me explain that. Um, Originally, you had hopes and dreams about the relationship with your wife. Okay. Now, these hopes and dreams, they were fueled with emotion, good and bad. And the fact is that you are never going back to the old relationship with your wife. This is either because you will be divorced or because you will be a changed man, right? In the first scenario, the relationship changes to a co-parenting one if you have kids with her, if divorce happens. So you're not going back to what it was. In the second scenario, when you're rebuilding your marriage, the relationship will be built on a new foundation, because you are no longer the same man, which means you're again now going back to the old relationship. Okay. So the equation has changed. So the result also changes. In this case, the relationship. And grieving the marriage means that you are letting go of the hopes and dreams of the old relationship from an emotional perspective.
Yeah, it's important that men know that grieving the old relationship doesn't mean you're giving up. It doesn't mean that you didn't care or you
Yeah.
don't continue to care about your wife or partner. Like grieving the old relationship is a process of clearing the way for the new relationship. The new relationship or the old relationship ran its course, parking that, clearing the way for something new in which you're going to be a new version of you if you do this work.
Yeah. 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 And it's so powerful when you can distinguish away from, oh my god, I'm grieving the relationship, that means I don't care about my life. No, that's not what we're talking about. No, it's what's happening is you take the I need my wife and you make it I want my wife, right? Need versus want, very different. Needing something has you do radical actions that you may not be proud of. Okay, so that's desperation. Now let's talk about the second symptom, talking about the marriage. This is the very first thing that you probably want to do to save your marriage, to be honest. Use your words to convince her why it's a bad move to leave you. But the fact is, your words means shit. See, trust has been so degraded between the two of you that have no weight at all. Okay, trust is in the negative, especially around correlation between your words and actions, right? So your words in the past were not backed up by actions. When you said something and you didn't follow through, it diminished it. Now, as a result, anything you say, she will not believe or care about. In fact, it'll probably frustrate her and make her want to avoid you at all times, right? Like if she knows that each time you and her are in close proximity or vicinity, and all you want to do is discuss the relationship, she's gonna avoid you like the plague, right? she will make every excuse available for her to spend as little time as possible around you just because of this alone.
Yeah, and those investment commercials, and there's that line, something along the lines of, past performance is not an indicator of future returns, or past performer is not a guarantee of future returns.
Yeah.
And that's very applicable unless your wife has experienced you breaking your word over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Right? She's tired of your word. She's tired of the short-lived promises or changes. So now you need to figure out why your changes are so shallow and not sustainable, so that she can buy into the fact that, hey, future returns can look different
Mm-hmm.
because you're changing, you're becoming different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And there's, to be honest, there's another reason why talking about your marriage is a no-go, and it's because she's checked out and fatigued, right? So in reality, and this is almost all marriages, very, very similar. Are there exceptions? Yeah, sure. But if I had to take a bet, I definitely bet on this. I'm talking 95% probability that she has been giving you signs and signals for at least 2 years, but probably more, which you didn't get, you didn't understand, or use to alter things in the marriage. You didn't use, even if you understood it, you didn't use it to alter things in the marriage. And as a result, her focus is off of the relationship, right? When you go and try to talk to her about the relationship, like it's the last thing that she wants to focus on or talk about, because her motive is to get out. So relationship talk just makes things significantly worse, right? Like at this point, she's looking for evidence why to leave you. And you kind of forcing her to have relationship conversations is doing exactly that, right? It's giving her more evidence that nothing will change and she needs to bail ASAP. Your words have no weight, so why should she listen to it, right? Hence, this is why it all accelerates the path towards, separation and divorce. Now, the antidote to this is to focus on your actions and way of being, and to not bring up relationship topics at all. If she does that, if she does bring up relationship herself, that's fine, but you should not initiate relationship conversations and just focus on your actions and way of being.
Yeah, and I really want to highlight the fact that here's a woman who wanted to talk about the relationship for at least the past 2 years. In her world, she's been working on it. In her world, she's been trying to get your attention. She's been trying to get you to buy in and to actually listen to her and work on the relationship. And you ignored it. So now you wanted to talk about it just because it's become important to you. It's actually a kick in the face for her.
Why
Right? You
now?
haven't earned the right for it to become important to her when it's been so important for her for so long, and you were just oblivious to it.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Exactly. That's a great other angle to look at it from. So there you got three like significant reasons why relationship conversations are like forcing to talk about a relationship just doesn't work. Okay, let's look at number 3, confronting her. This is a reactionary behavior which comes from lack of certainty and really the need to be in control. As men, we want certainty. We like to be certain that, and one aspect of certainty is, okay, like everything is okay with my wife. I want to be certain of that. And then the control part, right? So one of the key reasons you are experiencing marriage challenges is because of control. She feels controlled in some way, shape, or form. And listen, I get it. You may not see that right now, but I guarantee you there's some level of control. Even if you're doing manipulative control where you're not in her face and confrontational, but you're doing it in the subtle way. Now, when you confront her to assert some level of control in hope of, gaining some certainty for yourself, what you're actually doing is pushing her away and upsetting her like even more, because she's checked out. She's checked out of the relationship, and she believes she doesn't owe you anything, right? You controlling her or attempting to do so highlights that and pisses her off, because who the hell are you to confront me like this? Emerges like that kind of emerges in her mind, right? So these bring about emotions for her that further have her feel even more checked out. And really, it ditches all the remaining hope of anything that was potentially left ever on working out the stuff between the two of you. Okay? Now, another reason why controlling doesn't jive is that it makes you seem out of control. Okay? And safety and security for your wife is by far the most important thing in the marriage. Emotional safety and security being the top of it all. Okay? When you are confronting her and losing your shit, it is a very scary experience for her. And like deep down, even though, she's probably reacting back to you, yelling and screaming. So from the outside, it doesn't look like she's scared, but deep down, it's a scary place for her. And if she experiences constant confrontations from you, then naturally she will, want to avoid you. And like she doesn't want to experience that fear. So what else can she do other than stay away from it? And if she's avoiding you, then she is spending less time with you. If she's spending less time with you, then she's spending more time elsewhere and kind of drifting further away from you. Now, add on to the fact that her emotional needs are not fulfilled. So when I say spending time somewhere else, that could be another woman, that could be another man, right? Okay, so there are two antidotes for this, and they kind of work as a pair. Pulling your bullets is one, which is getting rid of your insecurities, your suppressed hurt. This gets rid of jealousy and most reactionary reasons that are typically pushing you to confront. Second is learning how to shift your context on the go. So context is your reality, and by default, due to thousands of years of survival and evolution of the humankind, our default context is typically very negative. Okay? Like when something happens, our go-to default context will probably be something negative. Now, you can learn how to alter your context to something more positive, which serves you, and which immediately alters your way of being. Okay? And I'm not joking. It immediately alters your way. It puts you into the way of being where your actions change. Hence, you can go from, feeling like confronting to being calm, collected within a matter of seconds.
Yeah, such a powerful tool. And I'm always amazed actually by, men come on a call with us and they're like, hey, I'm gonna confront my wife about, XYZ. And in that moment, they're actually convinced that something good is gonna come out of it. But the word itself, confront, is confrontational. And in my world, it speaks to a man's mindset and also to his hurt. So I invite men to be mindful of what is it that you actually want to confront your wife about? Because it's saying more about you than it is about your wife.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which leads, yeah, right.
Yeah.
And we're gonna touch on the emotional component of that later.
Yeah. And even this part, the next one, ego.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is the next one up. So I have no problem with ego. Okay. Like ego it's a requirement. It's an amazing tool in life, right? It has you win battles at work, in business, in competitions, whether it's sports or other stuff, right? Without ego, life would be very difficult for you and for everybody else, except in marriage, okay? Because ego has no place in marriage at all. You're not competing with your wife. You already won her. She's your wife. And because ego has no other purpose than to, fuel competition mode, there's no need for it in marriage. Removing ego from marriage is so critical because of this, right? Once you actually understand this. And there's also this reciprocity aspect to this, because when you are coming in with ego, she will reciprocate the same back to you. So naturally, now you are competing because she's reacting to your ego with her ego. And at this point, everything becomes tit for tat, who's right or wrong, or who's there to blame.
Yeah, and ego is actually also designed to keep you safe. So, in the context of your relationship, at various points you will be hurt. Right? Whether that is because of unmet expectations, mistakes being made, a lack of understanding of the masculine, the feminine dynamic, to mention but a few. But if you love someone, you leave yourself wide open to getting hurt. You love your kids, and throughout life, either intentionally or otherwise, they're going to do stuff that ends up hurting you. So the only way ego can protect you in your marriage is if it tells you not to love as much, right? So don't invest so much love and you won't get hurt to the same degree.
Uh-huh.
But is that really how men want to live? Like, do you really want to love your kids less so that they won't hurt you as badly?
Yeah. Oh, the light went off.
Was meant to go on with that statement.
I know. It's not coming back on. Give me 1 second.
Not sure how we're going to edit that out, but anyway.
We don't need to. It's bulletproof, man. Well, we don't need to edit. Now, there's something else that's really critical about ego that, like, I'll say it's a secret about ego because very few know about this or look at it from this way. And it really touches on the feminine, masculine kind of differences. Okay. So the ego of an average man is always higher than the ego of an average woman. And super high ego for a woman is very scary and unsafe. Okay. Now, as a result of this, when you show up with very high ego around your wife, she will immediately attempt to bring your ego down to her level. Okay? The way that would look like is she would bash your ego by, saying or doing things that would hurt you, that she knows would hurt your ego. Maybe she would call you names or label you or blame you, for example. Okay? Now, the antidote to this is to not wait until she brings your ego to her level. Okay? What you want to do is be proactive about it and bring her ego up to your level. Okay? In other words, you are building your wife's ego up to match up to or close to where your ego is. And this is magical because if you do this, then your ego stays intact and her ego will have her feel good about herself because of what you did. It's a win-win all around.
Yeah, and it's important to make sure that men hear this correctly. Like, Andre is specifically talking about her level of ego versus yours. We're not referring to her capabilities or capabilities of women in general versus men, or one being superior to the other. In fact, other than physical strength and probably driving skills, the average woman is superior to the average man in most cases, as regards to skill-based or communication-based,
Yeah.
etc., etc. Ability to
Relationship skills.
Right. Earn financially.
Intuition.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we are specifically and only talking about ego in both sexes.
Yeah. Now let's go to the other end of the spectrum, okay? Like the other side where there's no ego, or it's a different ego, which is pleasing her. This is ever so common state that relationship gurus call the nice guy syndrome, which, by the way, was coined by Dr. Glover. who wrote the Mr. No More Mr. Nice Guy. Okay. But of course, everyone is using this now, to gain attention. Anyhow, essentially, all that this boils down to is really pleasing. Okay. Pleasing means that you are doing things for your wife so that you can either manage her feelings, avoid confrontation, gain her approval, receive appreciation, or manage your own fear, to be honest, right? Especially if you are walking on eggshells around your wife all the time. And it has you kind of behave in a way where you want to avoid that. Okay. Now, either way, the real fundamental reason you are doing this is for you to feel safe. I'm going to say that again. The reason why you are pleasing and doing all the behaviors that come with pleasing is because you are wanting to feel safe. Pleasing comes from not feeling worthy or feeling like a burden. Okay. We call these the not worthy bullet and the burden bullet. Okay. These are insecurities that you have, which really cause the pleasing behavior itself at the root level. Okay. So at some point in childhood, something happened which hurt you, and had you label yourself as not worthy or a burden on others, or maybe both. Okay. The antidote to this is to get clear what happened that caused you to label yourself, and then remove the suppressed hurt from childhood, because you've been carrying that around. And you got to understand, shit happens to you at age 5 or 6, even though you're, let's say, 37 like myself today. That the maturity of that suppressed hurt is of a 5-6-year-old in a 37-year-old's body. Okay.
Yeah, and you touched on a couple of points there with respect to pleasing and some of the drivers for that, right? Managing her feelings, avoiding confrontation, gaining her approval. And in conjunction and in addition to all of those, for a man, when he gets a slap, when he gets to, hey, I want a separation or a divorce, there is a big ripple into what his life is. There's a big ripple and bomb placed right in the middle of what he thought his future was going to look like. And he is desperately trying to control the situation just to get back to stability for himself. It's not even always driven by, hey, I want to get back to stability in the relationship. He wants to get back to a place of stability for himself, because he just doesn't know how to handle what reality is today. And he doesn't know how to handle the uncertainty of what he's feeling with respect to the situation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. One more thing that came to me. So kind of one more thing on pleasing. Pleasing is very, 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 very unattractive. Okay. When you please, you come across as not safe. Okay. It's a different feeling of not safe versus when you confront and some of the other aspects of not safe that we talked about, because your wife is very intuitive and she knows when you are scared, walking on eggshells, and or trying to avoid confrontation or certain topics and situations. She may not say it, but she knows it. So constant pleasing makes you look like a puppet, and it has you being your feminine, really, at the end of the day, which forces her to step up into her masculine. Now, this is very unnatural for both of you, and it doesn't function in your relationship, especially long term. Men can be feminine. I have a feminine side. John has probably some feminine.
Not as
side.
much.
Not as much. And women have masculine sides as well, but it's not the ongoing state. Okay. It also makes you not attractive because it clearly communicates to her that you've lost your balls, right? And you get what I mean by that. Your confidence and that certainty that you provide for her, right? That you are willing to compromise who you are as a man just to make her feel a certain way.
Yeah, and the pleasing is also a byproduct of that desperation we spoke about earlier. Happy wife, happy life. So many people have heard that. So I do everything I think I know that she wants me to do, and then she's going to be happy, and she won't leave me. Right? We talk about that uncertainty that men go through.
Yeah.
Right? If I can get my wife to be happy, well, then why would she possibly leave? And the biggest error in all of that is the fact that you're basing your actions on what you think you know she wants. And in reality, if you were good at knowing that what she wants and what she needs, you likely wouldn't be here. So up until now, you were desperately trying to repair your marriage without actually having the required toolkit or the knowledge to be successful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This happy wife, happy life brings something to me, and this
Mhm.
is going to be very controversial. What I'm going to say right now, hopefully, it'll end for some of you. It is not your job to make your wife happy. That is not your job. Your wife is very, very capable of making herself happy. You just need to create the space for that. And one of the ways that she's also good at making herself happy is by letting you know what she needs for that. Your job is for you to be happy and lead the way, which is part of creating that space. Your job is not to make your wife happy. Okay, which very beautifully ends up leading into the next one. Okay, knowing what's best for your relationship. This is another symptom that men do that is just like, what a trap. Okay, I cannot emphasize how many men fall into this because they simply don't know or don't understand the differences between the feminine and masculine dynamics. One of your wife's role is in the marriage is to manage the relationship. When I say relationship, this is the relationship between you and her. Now, this includes things like communication, sex, other forms of intimacy, the space between the two of you, and really anything that has to do with the relationship between you and her. And when you think you know what the relationship needs, it makes you do things that are managing the relationship. Now, this has you take away from her the role that she's designed to do instinctively, and the role that she's way better at in executing than you are. And please, after this training, don't go to your wife and say, hey, you're supposed to manage the relationship. Don't do that. I'm talking in a masculine way so that you understand what goes on. But if you tell her management of the relationship, she'll have no idea what you're talking about, okay? Because it comes very instinctively for them, okay? And listen, I have fallen into this trap before back in the day, thinking that I'm better at this. And, let me tell you, like, it backfired, okay? Just think about it. You grew up playing with toys and trucks and soldiers. Your wife grew up with, Barbie dolls and tea time in the Barbie house. Her natural relationship instincts and skills are way more advanced than yours. No different than in my marriage and the thousands of men that we have helped at TBH. Okay, now the antidote to this is to get a deep understanding of the differences between the feminine and masculine roles in marriage. But that's not enough. Once you understand these differences, then respect those differences and do your part in the relationship and only your part.
Yeah, and I really hope that men see the antidote actually makes life easier for you when you master it. Right? There's work to get there. But you being aware of the things that you need to do and you having the control to actually go and own them and own the fact that they get done, that's simple. Right? It takes all that weight off your shoulders. You spare yourself all of that frustration of trying to control her, needing her to respond a certain way or to do certain things. You get to be responsible for you and what you bring to the relationship. End of. And as I said, that is so much easier than the complication of trying to control her.
Yeah, yeah. And the other aspect is identity, really, if I look at it, right? Because when you try to manage the relationship instead of letting her do it, it will be perceived as controlling by her. Now, if you do this long enough, what will end up happening is she will lose her identity as a result. You will kind of strip away the feminine aspect of her that will have her lose her identity as a woman, as a wife, and really as a mother, because it'll seep into how you're parenting as well. Now, when your wife loses her identity, she's going to wake up one morning and will say enough is enough. And she will want to find it, her identity, and she will want to get her identity back. However, because you are the cause of losing her identity in her mind, she will assume that she cannot do that with you around. So what's going to happen? Well, she will want to separate or divorce from you or leave you to remove the distraction that is in her way of finding her identity.
And in case men question the validity of this, the identity issue, like, have you ever heard of a woman who feels she lost herself by having kids? But she had this whole other life before kids. And as much as she may have wanted to have kids, she sacrifices a lot more to have them than most men do. Now, imagine what she feels like if she loses her identity in the relationship. We spoke about hopes and dreams earlier. Like, she had hopes and dreams of what the future with you was going to look like when she married you. And in her world, what is she left with if she's lost her identity as a woman and who she was and out there in the world before she became a mom? Right? She's lost is the simplest way to say it.
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned this with the trying to relate to the listeners around when she loses her identity, having kids. But we don't even have to go that far. I mean, either you're experienced this or you've heard your friends talk about this who are going through relationship challenges where the wife says, I need to figure stuff out. I just need to get away and I need to figure stuff out. Whether they go on a girls' trip for a week or they actually move out of the house, or whatever the case is, I need to figure stuff out. Like, I need to find myself. I need to figure stuff out. That's all this identity stuff that we're talking about. Okay. All right. Next one. Avoiding looking at yourself. Yeah, this is so hard for men to do. Like, seriously. Once you break through it and you actually get how important it is, then like it'll become easy. But to get to the breakthrough point for us men, it's so hard. And
and just to clarify, you're not talking about men looking at themselves in the mirror.
No, I'm not.
Like, we're accelerating away from that. So
yes.
I'm like, I don't find it too hard. I look at myself every morning when I brush my teeth.
Well, I mean, maybe, because once you look internally, then when you look in the mirror, that could be an exercise in itself in a very different way. But yes, I'm talking about more inward, right? And really there are a few reasons why this is hard. I guess first it has to do with our society and how we were raised, right? Boys don't cry. You must fix it by yourself and don't ask for help. Asking for help is weak. I don't have feelings. I don't know if any of these sound familiar, but these are some of the typical bullshit we feed ourselves to avoid internal work. And I'm not talking about personal development here in general. I am talking about like deep emotional work to get rid of suppressed hurt that have been holding you back for so long, and to really come to personal truths about your bullshit stories that you've been holding on to, right? Like that level of deep work, which comes with a level of permanence, some permanent shift and permanent change, which leads to altered behavior. Now, the other reason why as men we have a hard time doing this is fear. Okay? Like, let's face it, it's a very scary place to look back at the possible scenarios that have you behave the way you do today and what causes it. Like when some of this might hit home that I'm going to list. when your father beat you, or your mother ignored you, or when you were bullied, or when your parents were divorced, or when one of your parents passed away, or when the teacher called you stupid in front of the class, or one of your classmates did that in front of the class, right? Or when you didn't fit in with the group you wanted to fit in with so badly, or when you were sexually abused by a friend or a relative. Like, these are scary places to look at, and no wonder that we tend to avoid them, because they bring up the hurt and the shame that comes with it.
Yeah, and ignoring the pain of the past doesn't make it go away. It just means you continue to carry it around with you for longer. So the majority of men avoid revisiting that pain because they don't know what to do with it. It's a bit like, why would I want to poke that bear? Why would I want to stir up all of those emotions again, only to suppress them all over again? Like, it doesn't make sense to them. But we're not asking you to suppress them. We're asking you to implement tools and systems to actually deal with the past hurt and the past emotions. And not only those, but actually your perception of yourself as a result of those emotions and those scenarios.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the truth is that this is the starting point, man. Like, to get rid of desperation, to stop pleasing or controlling, to be able to let your wife manage the relationship, or to be able to stay on top of your ego. It all starts with looking internally and dealing with the demons that are causing those behaviors in the first place. Being in a place of responsibility and ownership, and saying that, hey, you know what? Like, this has got to change. Anyways, it will come back. There you go. Yeah, I mean, I lost my train of thought there, but at the end of the day, this is really one of the toughest things to do for a man, right? Once this is achieved, then implementing the tools that work, or behaving in a certain way, like, it becomes very easy, because the deep-rooted triggers are gone, right? It's easy and effortless.
Yeah, no, I want to actually revisit what I just said about those past memories include our perception of ourselves because of those situations. So a boy who got bullied as a kid will create a story about himself. Either he's weak, he's different, he doesn't fit in. And from that moment on, that perception of himself becomes part of his identity. So he may do his best to suppress it by becoming fit and strong. But it's a retaliation or a response to the hurt. So
Yeah.
later in life, he may not get physically bullied, but maybe people will make fun of his messed up ears from fighting. And he can't just knock those people out. That's not the way life works as an adult, right? It's only banter. But for that man, he's back in that schoolyard, being weak and unable to protect himself.
Mhm.
He doesn't see the banter. All he sees and feels is the pain of the past memories. And why are parents so adamant about telling their kids that the kids are not the reasons the parents are getting divorced? But parents know at some level the kids will take it on that they are the reason. They are the reason mom and dad were always fighting, or they don't love each other anymore.
Mhm.
And they know as parents that that's going to scar the kids for life. Until later in life, when those kids are actually older and emotionally able to deal with that pain. But as I said, I'm just highlighting the fact that it's not just about the pain associated with different scenarios, it's who we become as a result of that pain and those emotions.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, we covered a lot, and hopefully you got value. We're gonna head into the Q&A, but before we do that, I promised a bunch of resources. So for those men that are listening who are new, this is for you. So we got our Bulletproof Husband book, 330-page hard copy. It is free. You just pay for shipping. And we understand that it's going to take some time to arrive. So we're also giving you 3 trainings and a free template with that. All you need to do is put book in the comments, and John will send you the link to grab all of that, the book, the 3 trainings and the free template. Okay, so you can do that. Put book in the comments. In the meanwhile, we're going to go into the Q&A portion. Okay, so what I want you to do, if you've been listening, you have questions, maybe you jot some of them down, whether it's related to this actual topic that we talked about, or you have something specific that's going on for you. We want to create space to, spend half an hour answering some questions. So just put your question in the chat or in the comments, and what we'll do is we'll address some of those questions. Okay? So I'll give you a minute or two to do that. In the meanwhile, I'm going to pop back the book stuff so you know what to do there if you want to grab that. Okay, so we'll just wait a minute or two until we get a couple of questions in, and then we'll go ahead and address them.
Maybe we just addressed all the questions. You do not want this, man. You do not want to listen to Andre singing for the next 30 minutes.
I always knew I started in the wrong career. I should have been a singer, pop singer.
Yeah.
I mean, the way I sing Happy Birthday is just out of this world. All right, man, let's have some questions. I have a hard time believing nobody has questions. We can also wrap it up if nobody has questions. But if you do, put it in the comments. We are eager to give you some answers and help you, put you on the right track.
Yeah, no, sure. Maybe there's some man sitting there going, I don't want to be the first one, or I don't know how to ask it. Like, I don't know how to perfectly ask it.
Yeah,
ask it whatever way you know, right? Like, we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Just ask the question, what's going on in your marriage? What's not working? What's frustrating you? Well, what do I need to do next? Or here is where I messed up, and how do I do it differently next time? Anything. Okay, there we go. Sam, you have a question. All right. Put the question in the chat.
Sam is a tease.
Sam is a tease. That's right. Type your question. When I say put your question, I mean type your question in the comments. What are some ideas for building trust? Ooh, that's a loaded one. Okay, and a very important one. It's a great question. And it's not really about, and it's not even about ideas. It's more about tools. Okay. The first fundamental aspect of building trust is this aspect that we looked at this last section about internal change. Okay. You have trained your partner to expect certain types of behaviors from you when she does X, Y, Z. I do this, my husband's going to react this way. I do that, he's going to do that. And you've trained her to expect those behaviors from you. And those behaviors are the ones that, from your side, causing relationship challenges. And again, we're not saying that your wife has no responsibility in why your marriage is not working. We're not saying that. What we are saying is we're focusing on what the man needs to do, because that's what we can control. And that's what gives you the fastest results. And one of the things you can control is looking at yourself internally. Where can I take responsibility for where the marriage is at? And within doing so, you're going to start to realize that you have insecurities, bullets that you need to remove. You're going to start to realize that you're codependent. I potentially depend on my wife for my level of confidence, for my self-worth, from feeling appreciated, from feeling respected. I got to get rid of that, along with the desperation that comes with. That alone is going to have you show up differently. and have you behave differently. And when you behave differently, it will bring curiosity to her. Okay? Now, and here is the specific answer to your question. One of the things that comes with is this idea that your wife will test you. When you have trained your wife to expect certain behaviors from you, and all of a sudden you stop doing those behaviors, she will be like, what's going on? Who is this man? And she'll be very curious, and she won't believe it. So what she's going to do is test you. She will create tests and put you into situations by saying and doing things with the intention to trigger you. And at this point, she wants you to fail because she's pissed at you. Okay? Now, when you pass her tests consistently, you're significantly rebuilding trust because you're letting her know that this new version of yourself is here for the long run. You're letting her know that you're not pleasing. You're not just doing this to manipulate her back into the relationship. You are doing this because you have realized that you have responsibility in why the marriage is not working, and you are addressing them, and you're starting to see how it impacted not only your marriage, but all other areas of your life. So you are communicating to her that you're changing for yourself because you no longer tolerate the old version of yourself. And when you do that, you'll be passing her tests. And when you pass her tests, you're rebuilding trust significantly. Okay? And this kind of brings me to the next thing. Well, what can I do to put myself in situations to be tested? If test is the thing that will rebuild trust the fastest by me passing tests, what can I do to put myself in this situation? First of all, your way of being and showing up, having that curiosity, that automatically will have her test you. Second, we have this thing called bulletproof apologies, which when you deliver those, your wife will call bullshit on them and they will put you into testing mode. You will be tested because you will be letting her know the ways that you've changed that she will not believe. And again, she'll put you into the test. When you raise your confidence and you own your confidence and you have mastered manufacturing your own confidence without needing your wife for it, guess what? Again, you're putting yourself up into a situation where you'll be tested. And when you'll be tested, you'll pass those tests. Okay? Prioritizing your actions and being a man of your terms. When you stop compromising who you are as a man for the relationship, when you realize that who you are as a man is more important than the relationship, and you stop compromising yourself, again, you'll be put into the situation of being tested. So I just gave you 4 or 5 different situations there to put you in the space of being tested so that you can pass those tests and rebuild trust fast. But for you to be able to do that, there's fundamental work to be done on yourself. John, anything you want to add?
Yeah, for me, so two big components. A man getting to the point where he starts doing this work for himself. You know, you touched on, hey, I no longer want to be that old version of myself. That is a key component for a man to get to. Right? When you just look at, hey, I just wasn't proud of who I was being. Wasn't proud of who I turned out to be as a husband. And your driver is, hey, I don't want to be that man anymore. Then the journey does become about you, but what you bring to the relationship dramatically changes. Right? And the other key component for me is consistency. This is not a, hey, do this for 24 hours and everything's going to be good. It's not that. Right? You're not in this situation because of something, you know, that you were doing over a 24-hour period, unless you got caught having an affair. But all of the other mainstream stuff is just, it's an accumulation over a period of time. So for you to alter who you're being, the impact can happen quickly and the changes take time. So be realistic. Be realistic that, as I said, it's not a light switch. Just because you decide to be a better husband doesn't mean that tomorrow you're already there. Journey's complete. That's all.
Yeah, yeah. The consistency part is so key, right? It took years to get here, so you have to consistently demonstrate, weeks and months that, hey, okay, this is the new version of you. All right, Sam.
Yeah, because just
Oh, go ahead.
yeah,
Yeah.
just don't underestimate. It is not easy for a wife to give her husband a slap. It's not an easy process for her. She doesn't wake up and go, oh, you know what? I'm just sick of him. No matter how sick of you she is, it wasn't an overnight decision. It was effort on her part, hurt on her part, pain on her part to get to this stage where she feels the only choice that she has left to save herself is to get out of the relationship. Or the only access she has to save the kids is to get out of the relationship. It's not an easy place for a woman to get to.
Thank you. I do own my past actions. I own every single time I didn't show up, and there were many times. Yeah, awesome. Well done, Sam. Like that's where it starts, right? It's not about who's wrong or right or who's to blame, and it doesn't even matter that your wife is not owning her actions. It doesn't matter. The way to get her to own her own actions is for you to lead the way by owning yours, right? Somebody has to demonstrate leadership, and it's typically a masculine trait, right? So it's on you. When you do that, magical things can happen. Okay. Let's do some more questions.
And as I said, owning the past actions is awesome, and it's a line in the sand. Mm-hmm. Now you gotta own what your future actions look like. If I punch my wife in the face in the past, it's all well and good that I owned it. I shouldn't have done it. But unless I start changing who I'm being, and unless she starts seeing a different future with me, she needs to, you're asking about trust. She needs to believe through your actions and how you're turning up that the future can look different.
Yeah. Okay. We have a question. How do I know when and when not to please her? Great question. You never want to please your wife. Sorry. Let me rephrase that. When you're going down on her, yes, when you're going down on her, when you're performing in bed, you can please her there. But in the emotional realm, you never want to please your wife. Okay? What you want to be is in service of her. So there's this idea of being helpful and being of service. Being helpful is very annoying to your wife. You're constantly there. How can I help? How can I help? Can I help? What do you need? What do you need? Very annoying because you're giving her more work. She now has to explain. But being of service means that you have a level of presence. You're so aware and so present with your wife that you can tell what are the things to get done, need to be done. And then you go be of service by doing that without having any expectations of something in return. Okay? Pleasing has an expectation. Okay? Pleasing has an expectation for something in return. I please my wife so she doesn't confront me, so she doesn't argue with me, so I don't have to walk on eggshells. I please my wife so she's nice to me. I please my wife so she respects me, right? There's a reciprocity that's required back. And that's why there's a secondary gain that you're looking to get, which is why you're doing the pleasing. So pleasing should never really happen. If it's happening, it is bullet driven. Okay? Bullets are insecurities. What is insecurity? Suppressed hurt. Hurts that you've suppressed in the past, you carry with you. And you've built survival behaviors so that you don't have to go and feel that hurt. And when somebody triggers your suppressed hurt, you go into that survival behavior mode. That's all pleasing is. But as a result of doing that, you're protecting yourself. So really, there's no reason for pleasing other than in bed. Okay? You now, when do you want to be of service to your wife? Whenever you want to, right? I mean, it's a gift that you're giving in the marriage towards your wife. I am giving you a gift of me being so present and aware, and I'm taking action on that so that it's easier for you. Oh, and by the way, I want nothing in return. It's just who I am as a man. That's being of service. John, anything you want to add?
Yeah, just coming from that place of service, being in service versus pleasing as a result of being insecure. Like vastly, like the things you're doing may look the same, but why you're doing them and who you're being in the process of doing them are so different. And they're not only so different to you, they're so different to her, because she'll pick up on so many subtle mannerisms with respect to how you're doing it, how you're interacting, whether you're looking for validation afterwards, whether you're just being in service and being a rock solid husband, because that's a reflection of who you are, versus being this weak individual who's, as Andre said, you're just trying to do stuff not in service, but for the secondary gain of, oh, if she's not annoyed with me, she should be so much nicer to communicate with. So you end up controlling because of insecurity, which comes out as pleasing, versus, hey, I am rock solid as a husband and I'm taking care of my wife. So different.
Yeah, exactly. So Arturo, does this give you what you needed? Just put a yes or a no in the chat if you're still here. In the meanwhile, can we get some more questions? We'll do
and again, this section, I think it's important to highlight that this section, this idea of doing Q&A, like it's a test, right? It's a test for us to see what you men want, right? We went through a good few months of delivering a lot of content, and we had the idea that, hey, maybe let's see if there's an appetite for men to be more interactive, right? So if this is not what you need, we're going to adjust again in a period of time, obviously. But
yeah, and if you're first time listener, follow us, get notified when next live goes. I usually put it on the day of or the day before. You'll get notified when we're on, and you can expect Q&A. So let's do one more question. Otherwise, if there's no other questions, then I want to give you 3 more gifts. We'll wait 30 seconds to see if there's a question. Anybody has anything they're struggling with their wife, with themselves? I can't believe more people are not taking it. Yeah. Listen, it's no different than, how do I say this? It's hard to get to that. Remember, I talked about that breakthrough point. That's to get to that breakthrough point. Once you get there, it's like super easy. But getting there, it's not. Right? There might be some men on the live here today that are just not at the breaking point yet, or they're close to it. But right now, there's a leap of faith that you can take, and I guarantee you will get value, because I will answer your question until you've gotten value, right? But yeah, take advantage of that, like Sam said. Okay, is GR having a question here? I definitely.
Yeah.
Is there a question?
Yeah.
Trying to be more interactive with my wife. I have definitely not been a leader in the past. What can I start doing immediately to be more of a leader and men? Okay. Talk less, do more. And when I say talk less, I don't mean you have to interact with your wife. I'm not saying become a robot and just do stuff. Especially when you're in communication with her, you do want to be able to Even there, talk less, but whatever you do talk should be very meaningful. So in general, talk less, do more. And when you're communicating with her, create the safe space for her to be able to express herself. Women feel and then act, men act and then feel. So one of the things about your wife is that for her to figure out what her feelings mean, she needs to express it. When you're in communication with her, you want to create a safe space for her to be able to express her feelings. Okay? And when she does that, the probability of her figuring out what it means is going to be much, much higher. Okay? And you're creating safety. So one of the areas to lead with is actions versus words. Second one is safety and security. Creating a level of safety and security, especially on the emotional side. Fulfilling your wife's emotional needs is your job, not the other way around. Okay? It is not your wife's job to fulfill your emotional needs. That is BS. You should fulfill your emotional needs through other healthy masculine relationships. Okay? But for your wife, you are the rock, the pillar, the bowl, right? You are what she leans on and expects to be able to get her emotional needs met. This is how emotional affairs start, right? Emotional needs are not met for years, and then she gets them met by somebody else. And when that other man meets those emotional needs, turns into a physical affair. Okay, so emotional needs and meeting them is your job, and it's a huge area of leadership. Okay, John, what other areas? I said 2 or 3. What other areas? You chime in as well. What are other areas that you think are important?
Yeah, so for me there are a couple of positions in life that really put a microscope on who we are as people. So being a parent is a huge microscope on who you are as a man. Mm-hmm. And being in a relationship like a marriage is another microscope that's constantly analyzing who you are over a long period of time. Right? So you not being a leader in the past, you got to look at, okay, what type of leader do I want to be? Like, what is JR about? What is he known for? Who does he know himself to be? Not from the bullet-ridden insecure JR, but who is he striving to be? What are the components, as I said, of who he is, and what is his leadership about? Because if a man's not clear on that, it's very hard for someone else to follow it if you're not clear on it, because she's gonna follow whatever you put out there. So the other component for me is about really getting present to yourself about what type of leader you are. What are the components of you that make you JR? Right, your terms. Right, and for me, that's a key component of how it's going to impact your ability to lead in the relationship. And obviously, emotional insecurity, emotional self-sufficiency, or in most cases for men, when they come to the bulletproof husband, it's the dependency at that point until they start to become independent. But yeah, really start paying attention to what are the things that annoy you in the relationship. And I'm highlighting that for you so that you start paying attention to these are areas that you need to work on. What annoys you within the relationship is a reflection of you. It's not a reflection of her. It's not a reflection of the relationship. Right? So that's part of the process for me, that you can immediately start looking on that will have an impact on your relationship.
Cool. All right. Before we wrap it up, I promised some cool stuff here. So first off, we want to give you a free training, at the end of which you will get a link to book a 1-hour free coaching call with one of our coaches. Okay. You can do that by putting call in the chat. Okay. That's one. The other one that I want to give you is our daily email mentorship. I send out daily emails, contextual and actionable, with daily testimonials. If you want to get on that list and actually start receiving these emails, put daily in the comments, and then John will send you the link to that as well. Or I will also, because now I'm free. Cool. All right. So yeah, again, call for coaching and then the daily for the emails. Once we close this, if we close it and you haven't commented, you can go to the YouTube channel or Facebook page and you can comment there. We'll send it to you afterwards, okay? Because we are going to wrap it up then. Stay tuned. Come next week. If you have questions throughout the week, write them down, bring them. Again, the questions don't have to be based on the topics that we cover in the daily or in the live. They can be questions that are going on for you right now, okay? So if throughout the week you're experiencing stuff and questions come up for you, write them down so that when you come to this live, you're ready at the end to pop in some of those questions and we can actually get this be a well-oiled machine. All right. So we're out. John, any last words before I wrap it up?
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Nom,
All right.
nom, nom.
Take care, man.